The call came at 11:47 at night. I know the time because I had been awake. Not anxiously, not waiting, but in the specific alert wakefulness of a mother whose 15-year-old daughter was sleeping at her grandparents' house for the first time in 2 years and who had told herself, firmly and several times that evening, that everything was fine. Everything was not fine. My daughter Maya's voice on the phone had the specific quality of someone who has been crying for long enough, that the crying has moved past its acute phase into something quieter and more embedded. The voice of someone who is no longer actively breaking but is sitting in the wreckage. "Mom," she said. "I'm here," I said. "What happened?" She told me it took 12 minutes. When she finished, I sat in my bedroom in the dark for approximately 30 seconds, and then I got up, got dressed, got my keys, and drove the 23 minutes to my parents' house, without exceeding the speed limit because I have always understood that arriving composed is more effective than arriving fast. My name is Delia Fontaine. I am 43 years old, and what my parents did to my daughter on a Friday night, and what I did to them between Saturday morning and the following Thursday, is a story about the specific distance between a betrayal and its consequences, and about how short that distance can be when the person it happens to has spent 15 years building something that her parents never bothered to understand. I have to tell you what they did, not in graphic detail, in the specific, accurate detail that the story requires to be understood correctly. My daughter Maya had been struggling, not in any clinical sense. I want to be clear about that. But in the way of a 15-year-old who is bright and sensitive and navigating the specific terrain of adolescence with a particular combination of intensity and vulnerability that makes that terrain harder for some people than others. She had been seeing a therapist for 8 months. The therapist, a woman named Dr. Hara, whom I trusted completely, had described Maya's progress as genuine and consistent. Part of that progress had involved Maya deciding on her own that she wanted to try rebuilding a relationship with my parents. My parents had been peripheral figures in her life for 2 years. The periphery, a consequence of a previous incident that I had managed by reducing access rather than eliminating it, because Maya had asked me to. She had wanted grandparents. She had wanted the version of them that existed in birthday cards and holiday photographs. I had allowed the sleepover because Maya had asked, because Dr. Hara had said it was Maya's decision to make, and because I had believed, incorrectly, as it turned out, that even my parents understood the specific responsibility of a grandparent hosting a vulnerable teenager. What they did was tell her the truth about something I had been protecting her from. Not a general truth. A specific, targeted, carefully timed truth about her father, my ex-husband, that I had made the deliberate therapeutic decision, in consultation with Dr. Hara, to share with Maya only when she was ready and only in the context of professional support. My parents had known this. I had told them explicitly, in a conversation 6 months earlier when the possibility of the sleepover was first raised, that there were things Maya did not yet know about her father, and that those things were to be left to me and Dr. Hara to handle in the appropriate time and context. They had agreed, on Friday night, for reasons I have never fully understood, whether from the specific recklessness of people who believe their authority overrides their agreements, or from the particular cruelty of people who mistake the delivery of pain for the delivery of truth. They had told her anyway, not gently. Not in the context of support or preparation. At the dinner table, with my father's specific phrasing that Dr. Hara would later describe as almost deliberately destabilizing, Maya had spent 2 hours in the bathroom before calling me. I arrived at my parents' house at 12:31 in the morning. I knocked on the door with the specific knock of someone who has decided what this visit is about and is not bringing uncertainty into it. My father answered. He was in his robe. He had the expression of a man who had been waiting for this knock and had spent the interval since the phone call constructing a defense. I did not let him use it. "Where is Maya?" I said. "She's in the guest room. She's fine. Where is Maya?" He stepped back. I went inside. I went to the guest room. Maya was on the bed with the specific stillness of someone who has exhausted everything and is now simply waiting. I sat beside her. I held her. I said the things that needed to be said, not the things that explained or justified or contextualized, but the things that said, "You are loved, you are not alone, we are leaving now." We left. I put Maya in my car, I drove 2 blocks and pulled over. I called Dr. Hara's emergency line. Dr. Hara called back in 4 minutes. I sat in the car with my daughter while her therapist walked us through the immediate steps. What Maya needed tonight, what the coming days required, how to hold the next 48 hours in a way that protected the 8 months of progress. I drove home, I got Maya settled. I sat at my kitchen table at 2:15 in the morning and I opened my laptop. My parents had one thing that I had never fully deployed against them, not because I had been saving it, because I had not needed it, because the management of the relationship, the careful, patient, deliberate management of two people whose presence in my life and my daughter's life required constant calibration, had never before required the full weight of what I knew and what I held. It required it now. The thing I held was this: my parents' house. Not metaphorically, literally. My parents lived in a house that had been in the Fontaine family for 31 years. My grandmother had purchased it. When my grandmother died 11 years ago, the house had passed to her estate. The estate had been handled technically, by the estate attorney, in a process that had involved several family members, and had concluded with an arrangement that most people in the family understood as my parents' house, but that the actual documents described somewhat differently. My grandmother, who had been a careful woman with a specific distrust of assumptions, had structured her estate with the guidance of an attorney who shared her preference for precision. The house had not passed directly to my parents. It had passed into a family trust, the Fontaine Family Residential Trust, with the provision that my parents could occupy it for their lifetimes provided certain conditions were maintained. The trust had a trustee. The trustee, since my grandmother's death and by the specific provision of her estate documents, was the eldest grandchild in the direct line. That was me. I had been the trustee of the Fontaine Family Residential Trust for 11 years. My parents had always known this in the technical sense of people who had signed documents acknowledging it. They had never engaged with it in the practical sense of people who understood what it meant. At 2:15 on Saturday morning, I called my attorney. I left a message. I said, "I need to discuss the Fontaine Trust. It's urgent. Call me as early as you can." She called at 7:42. The conditions my grandmother had specified for continued occupancy were not unreasonable. They were, in the language of estate attorneys, behavioral conditions, clauses that made the right of occupancy contingent on conduct that the trust creator considered fundamental. My grandmother had been specific. The conditions included maintenance of the property in good repair, compliance with applicable laws and ordinances, and, this was the clause that mattered on Saturday morning, no conduct by the occupants that a reasonable person would characterize as harmful to any direct line family member. My grandmother had written this clause herself. Her attorney had told her it was unusual. She had told him to include it. She had been, my grandmother, a woman of precise instincts. I described to my attorney on Saturday morning what had happened on Friday night. I described it factually. I described the prior agreement. I described the specific conduct. I described Dr. Hara's assessment of the harm. My attorney was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "The behavioral clause." "Yes," I said. "You want to invoke it." "I want to understand my options," I said. She told me my options. The options were significant. I called my parents on Saturday morning at 9 o'clock. My father answered. "Delia," he said, the name carrying the weight of a man who has been awake since 2 in the morning, constructing positions that he has less confidence in than he had at 2 in the morning. "I need you to listen to me very carefully," I said. "I am not calling to argue about what happened last night. I am calling to tell you what is going to happen next." A pause. "What do you mean?" he said. "You live in Grandma's house," I said. "You have lived there for 31 years. You know that the house is in the Fontaine Trust. You know that I am the trustee. Delia. You know that the occupancy is conditional," I said. Grandma was specific about what the conditions were. "I have spoken to the trust attorney this morning. The conduct on Friday night, which was documented, which was witnessed, and which Dr. Hara has assessed in writing as harmful to Maya, satisfies the grounds for a review of the occupancy conditions." The silence that followed had a different quality from any silence in any previous conversation with my father. "Are you saying?" He stopped. "I'm saying the trust gives me the authority to initiate a formal review," I said. "I'm saying that review, if initiated, would assess whether the conditions for continued occupancy have been violated. I'm saying that the outcome of that review, given what happened Friday night, would not be favorable to you." "Delia, that house is our home," he said. "We've lived there for 30 years. "Your grandmother." "My grandmother wrote the behavioral clause herself," I said. "She was very specific about what she was protecting. I think if she had known Friday night was possible, she would have written it exactly the same way." A long silence. "What do you want?" he said. "I don't want anything from you," I said. "I want something for Maya. I want you to understand that what you did on Friday night was not a grandparenting decision. It was a choice to harm a vulnerable 15-year-old that you had made an explicit agreement to protect. And I want you to understand that agreements, when broken, have consequences." "We were telling her the truth," he said. "She deserved to know. She deserved to know on her timeline," I said, "in the context of her therapy, with the support of a professional. You knew this. I told you explicitly. You agreed and you did it anyway." My mother's voice in the background. "Is she going to take the house?" my mother said. I heard the specific fear in it, not the managed fear of a performance, the real kind. The kind that arrives when something you have treated as permanent reveals itself as conditional. "I am not making any decisions today," I said. I am telling you that the decision is mine to make. And I am telling you that what happens next depends entirely on what the next weeks look like. Whether Maya's recovery is supported or complicated, whether the two of you understand what you did, whether you do anything that resembles accountability rather than defense. I paused. That's all I'm saying today. I ended the call. The next 3 weeks were the most carefully navigated of my adult life. Maya's recovery was not linear. It never is with these things, and Dr. Hara had prepared me for that. There were good days and harder days, and one very difficult Tuesday that I will not describe in detail because it belongs to Maya and not to this story. But the trajectory was upward, and the upward movement was real. And Dr. Hara told me at the end of the 3rd week that Maya's resilience was, in her professional assessment, remarkable. She's angry, Dr. Hara said. Good, I said. She's processing the anger correctly, Dr. Hara said, which takes a specific kind of support at home. She has it, I said. I know, Dr. Hara said. My parents had called 4 times in the 3 weeks. The first call, my father, defensive. The second call, my mother, tearful and somewhat more honest. The third call, my father again, this time without the defense, with something more exposed. The fourth call, both of them, together, on speaker, which told me they had decided that the separation of their previous approaches was not producing the outcome they needed. On the 4th call, my mother said, "We are sorry, not for the content, for the way, for the timing, for the agreement we broke. We are sorry." It was the most specific apology my mother had ever delivered. It was not sufficient, and both of us knew it. "I hear you," I said. "The house," my father said, "is not the subject of this conversation," I said. "Maya is the subject of this conversation." I did not remove them from the house. I want to be honest about this because the story requires it, and because dishonest endings serve no one. What I did was complete the formal review. I instructed the trust attorney to document the process, to assess the conduct against the clause, to produce a formal finding. The finding confirmed that the conduct on Friday night satisfied the grounds for review and that the trustee had full authority to initiate occupancy proceedings. I held that finding. I have not acted on it. Not because I forgave my parents. Not because the finding was insufficient, because Maya asked me not to. She asked me at breakfast on a Saturday morning, 3 weeks after Friday night, with the specific direct calm of a 15-year-old who has been in therapy for 8 months and has learned to say what she means. "The house," she said. I looked at her. "Don't take it," she said. "Not yet." "Why?" I said. "She thought about this, because I want it to be a possibility," she said. "Not a punishment I already gave. I want them to know it's still possible. That what they do next still matters." She paused. "Does that make sense?" "Yes," I said. "They hurt me," she said. "I want them to spend a long time knowing you could and chose not to. That's worse than just doing it." I looked at my daughter, 15 years old, in therapy, processing the specific wreckage of people who should have protected her, and I felt something that I could only describe as awe. "That is significantly more sophisticated than my approach," I said. She almost smiled. "I know," she said. "The house remains in the trust. The finding remains in the trust attorney's files. My parents remain in the house, under conditions they now understand completely, not in the technical sense of people who sign documents, but in the practical sense of people who have been shown exactly what the conditions mean and who is holding them. They call Maya now, not in the way of people performing grandparenting. In the way of people who understand that the relationship they have access to is not the relationship they had before Friday night. It is a new one, more careful, more honest, built on the knowledge that the person on the other side of it has a mother who holds a document that tells them exactly what their access is worth and what it depends on. Maya takes their calls sometimes, not always. On her timeline, Dr. Hara says her progress continues. I sit at my kitchen table at 9 o'clock in the evenings after Maya goes to bed, and I think about my grandmother, the woman who wrote a behavioral clause into an estate document because she understood, with the precision of someone who had watched her own family for 8 decades, that love without accountability is not actually love. It is performance. And performance eventually has an audience that stops attending. Before you go, I need your real answer in the comments right now. Was Maya right to ask her mother not to take the house, or was keeping the possibility open more powerful than the act itself? This question will divide this comment section in half, and I genuinely cannot pick a side. Tell me where you land. If this story reached something in you, if you have ever stood between your child and the people who should have known better, hit that like button right now so this story finds the parents and daughters who need to hear it today. Share this with someone who is holding a document, a decision, a line they have not yet crossed but are standing at. And if you believe that accountability is the most honest form of love, subscribe, because every week this channel tells the stories of people who protected what mattered and let everything else be what it was. Audible's first month is completely free. The link is in the description. For every mother who has been awake at 2 in the morning making decisions that will take years to understand. There are 500,000 stories that know exactly what that feels like. One of them is waiting for you tonight.